Alrighty, chickadees. This is Mama Hen coming to you live from Command Central, and here we are again. We're talking about the panic attack that comes when you hit to the high school level. Those of you who've been doing this along and along come to a new phase, and you're like, "Oh, wait a minute! This feels like the weight of responsibility is really heavy again," and we have a lot of panic about. What about high school? And I'm going to tell you a little secret just before we get started that I think high school is much easier to manage than listening to an emergent reader. So those of you who have been through that beginning phases and managed all of that, how to learn how to read stuff, this I think is a whole lot easier. There are a lot of just little details that make it extra scary, though, what you don't know that you don't know. And that's what I'm here to help you kind of navigate through. But as you're planning your course of study, you're still homeschooling. You're going to DIY your child's education. And so you have to pick and choose the learning materials and learning activities and figure out, is this enough? Does this count? Will this open the doors of opportunity after graduation and those kinds of things? And so that's what this talk is about, kind of that basic, how do you plan your course of study when you get to high school? And why? why are we planning ahead like this? So I brought along with me a little document to kind of help you see the organization of the topics as I'm talking through them, and also help keep me on track. And then it is my plan to go ahead and do some more of these tutorials as we go along. Even people who are not in high school yet will, I think, be interested to know more about how do we go about getting high school, because I'll get people who start at the beginning and say, well, I'm just starting kindergarten, but I want to know, is this a dead end track that we're on? What happens when they graduate from high school? Where do they go? What do they have to do? And so this is kind of a help for that kind of thing too. But if you are just getting started and you're peeking into this, don't let yourself get all freaked out. Because there's lots that can change between now and then, but this is meant to kind of simplify and help, understand at least what we're aiming to do as we homeschool through high school. And those of you who have started now and find yourself being thrown into the deep end, it's okay. I'm here to help you, and we're gonna get started. So with this particular application, I can see your comments, but I don't have a way. It won't let me comment back. So I will come back and type in answers as we go along. Especially if I didn't answer your question in the live. I just want to try to stick to the outline as much as possible. So here we go. This one is about just your planning for high school, your basic introduction, orientation about how do I go about this high school plan kind of a thing. And so I'm going to share my screen here so that we can follow along a little bit on some of these requirements that we have to go. So let's back up first before we start talking about transcripts and all that kind of stuff. Let's talk about real basically what the homeschool law actually requires us to do. So when you sign the forms for SCTOP, you are saying, yes, I understand this is what the law is doing. Yes, I'm going to maintain these basic records. And so the homeschool law requires a certain minimum education. They were very concerned in the beginning when the laws were made that somehow people were just not going to educate. And they tried to make the wording as specific as possible, but it really doesn't capture a lot of the nuance of some of the things that actually happen in education. And so there is a basics of what the law says, and you can follow it exactly, the letter of the law, exactly what it says. It has 180 days of attendance. It has some basic subjects. When we get to high school, it is using the word, instead of reading and writing, it's calling it literature and composition, math, science, and social studies. So there's 4 basic subjects that you're covering: the English component, a math, science, and a social studies. And then you're supposed to be keeping some basic records, some day-to-day lesson plan or journal, some samples of their work. It's called a portfolio, and periodically assessing what's working and what's not working so you can make changes as you go along. and you can follow that just like that. However, when we say this is what the homeschool law requires, and I've actually heard people that say that's all you're supposed to do. You don't have to do anything else beyond that. But my question to you is, then what's next after homeschooling? Those minimum requirements don't give you an educational resume that opens the doors of opportunity afterwards. What are your goals for your child after you're done homeschooling? Do you want them to have the opportunity to go to college? Even if they aren't currently thinking, I want to go to college, what if they get down the road and they change their mind? I deal with people all the time, because we didn't know this 5-10 years ago, that this educational resume, this transcript, was going to be so important. And somewhat scrutinized, actually. So we want to be sure that if your child changes their mind, that they can. And what I'm getting now is people that come back 5-10 years down the road, and they're like, we don't have a transcript, but I want to go to college now. What do I do? And so I would much rather try to save us. My goal is to smooth out the road for you, so that when your child gets that far down the road, they have the doors of opportunity still open to them if they should change their mind. What you don't know that you don't know, the biggest factor is, what's my child going to want to do later and change their mind for? And we're trying to keep all these doors of opportunity open. And so the simplest way to do that, to keep those doors of opportunity open when you don't know what their actual goals are, is to have some sort of high school equivalency. That is the standard that opens the doors of opportunity for public school kids too. If they get tired of doing public school, they can get a GED. That's a high school equivalency test. It's one test that you take that shows that I've obtained the level of education that's equivalent to any other high school. And you can do that. We can do that as homeschoolers. So if you just want to follow the minimums and say, this is what we're doing, that's it, then they can go take a GED. The other opportunity that we have available to us is to show an equivalent education. And in my opinion, I think that the legislation, when it says we want you to have at least a minimum education, I think the spirit of the law is saying that they want our graduates to also have this minimum education equivalent to what a high school diploma is. And so that is why I follow the diploma track. There are people out there, if you listen on social media, things can get really ugly about if you're following an association that recommends that you do more than what the homeschool law requires, then, leave them, whatever. I'm trying to help you smooth out those things so that your child does have that minimum education and that educational resume. The thing I'd like you to know about our transcripts and diplomas is that they are still technically parent-made transcripts. No matter where you go, which association you choose, it's still the parents' records that are being considered, and there is nowhere that will get a state-issued diploma or transcript under homeschooling, under option 1, option 2, or option 3. Nobody's issuing a state-issued diploma under homeschooling, because what that implies is that our teachers have been evaluated, our curriculum has been evaluated, and it somehow is under the state's approval that way. And it's not. The Department of Ed does not approve any of our diplomas or transcripts, which is still okay, because the Commission on Higher Education is the one that really oversees a lot of these kinds of policies. And as long as they are saying that the parent-made transcript, the homeschool law says the parent is the record keeper. And so the parent-made transcript is supposed to be acceptable. The problem that we're running into is that people over the years have misunderstood what they're saying on their transcript because it's the first time they did it. They were unfamiliar. There's also little details that you might not know about that you're missing when you put it on your transcript. And you're guessing at some of the things that they really want to know. But I get a front row seat with all of the workshops that the public school guidance counselors go to as well. And so the Commission on Higher Education has laid out all of these things, and I'm trying to help you with those things that you don't know, and the changes that happen along as well. And so it's still your transcript. I'm helping you format it and preparing it and verifying it. Because if somebody should want to know, hey, what about this? I actually had a conversation with a college that said, hey, what about this? And I said, somebody was actually contesting somebody's transcript recently, and I was able to put our reputation behind it and say, this has been validated just the same as all of my other students. I would not risk any of their opportunities to put something that's false on there. And so I promise you, I've validated these things, and they took my word for it. And that student is in college still. So, they didn't revoke his application. So those are the kinds of things that can also help with somebody that's looking at your transcript and saying, okay, this is what it means. This is what it's saying. And that's what I'm here to try to help you do as we go forward, formatting your transcript. And so I do offer transcript assistance. It is required. And we'll get into some of that when I go over some of the SC top policies near the end. But just as you're beginning to think about, what do I want to go on my transcript? We want to see what your course of study is going to include. And I do have a little worksheet. I don't know if I can get it to pull up right now in this window, but I dropped a link for it so you can print it out. And it is the Diploma Standard Worksheet. So on there are 24 total credits that you will need, 4 Englishes, 4 maths, 3 sciences, 3 social studies, and they're specific about which social studies they want you to have on there. They usually have U.S. history, they have an economics and government, and a 3rd credit of some other social studies. It could be world history or geography or civics. I have people that do like African American studies. You can be really, really specific about some of the things that are most interesting to you in social studies that way as well. But there's three credits that are needed. And before I move on, because those are the 4 basic subjects that they're trying to cover in the law: English, math, science, and social studies. Those are your basic core credits that you're also trying to accomplish in your transcript. But notice that you only need 3 credits of science and 3 credits of social studies in your 4 years of high school. Where if you kind of read the homeschool law, some people will interpret it and say, well, we need 4 credits of science and 4 credits of social studies because the law says we have to cover those every year. But I don't read it the way that it means it has to be a full year's credit of those things, because it also says literature and composition, and those aren't 2 full credits either. So you could be doing just touching on some of these subjects, and it's a unit or 2 that the subjects interlap and overlap each other, so you're still covering subjects even if you might not be earning a full credit in there. But again, I think that it's the spirit of the law that we're aiming for, this minimum, and the language that they had to use to say this is a minimum education doesn't encompass the nuance when you get to high school. So there's nobody that's going to go, I caught you breaking the homeschool law because you didn't do a 4th science. You still get into colleges. The colleges are not looking for that. Nobody's looking for that. It's when you're obeying the law, you don't have to look over your shoulder and wonder who's going to catch me if I don't do it. Like, the spirit of the law is, pretty minimal stuff that we're aiming for. And so we want our kids to just be educated and, functional when they get past high school. What do they want to do? So, okay, so those are the basic credits there. Then you also have a technology credit, like computer of some kind. It can be keyboarding, but a lot of times it's more just like computer skills using the apps. Do I know how to make a spreadsheet and a Word document and a PowerPoint? And it could be in the Office suite or in Microsoft, Google. suite of, products and tools so that you can communicate. Can I communicate with technology? And so that's a great basic technology credit that a lot of people get. And then you also need a physical education. And there's one more. Hold on. It says, a foreign language, a world language, or some kind of career training. So you could do a year of like Spanish if you want to. Or if your child really struggles with languages, why not put them into something that is like, culinary arts or auto mechanics, cosmetology stuff, whatever their interests are in more of a career field, they can follow some of that kind of stuff too. And that counts instead of a world language. Now, and then you also need the equivalent, some other extra credits, electives, they call them electives, to total up to 24 credits as a minimum. You can have more than that. Some schools are on like a block schedule, so they do 4 credits in the fall and 4 in the spring, and then they end up with 8 total per year. But we want to have at least 6 total credits per year. Which is a little bit of, like I said, above and beyond that, 4 subjects that is named specifically in the homeschool law. And so that's the minimum standard that you can aim for. If you know that your child is aiming for a particular college, you should also look at the college admissions requirements. Because they can differ a little bit. So, for instance, if you want to go, usually it's at a 4-year college, university admissions. If they're coming in as a freshman, those admissions requirements might have 2 years of a foreign language. So if you followed the diploma standard that says they don't even necessarily have to have a foreign language, then they can't get in as a freshman. They won't meet that eligibility requirement for freshman admissions into that, like USC or Clemson or College of Charleston. Any of those 4-year institutions usually have that. Sometimes they even say 3 years of a foreign language. The other thing that can be a little bit different too is in the math progressions. So for college admissions, and especially the 4-year colleges, they want Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, and then pre-calculus, or they have a discrete math, or they have statistics. There's a 4th higher math like that that follows that same progression. So if you know that your child is aiming for those things, be sure that you're looking at those college admissions requirements. But for our purposes in this conversation, we're not going to really talk about that. I will do some more like case studies of different transcripts so that we can look specifically at how they vary different students, where they were going and that kind of thing. And I think that'll help the more examples you see so that you can start to like plan your course of studies and try to see what will help you. But for our purposes, we're really only talking about the minimum standard with the diploma equivalent. And so you do need 4 maths in there. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be algebra. So I have a lot of students that'll struggle with algebra and they need to do 2 years of Algebra 1. Years ago, they used to call it pre-algebra and Algebra 1. Now they call it Foundations in Algebra and Intermediate Algebra, and that equals 2 math credits and covers essentially the content that's in Algebra 1. That progression will not be enough to get you into a 4-year college as a freshman, but it is enough to get you into a 2-year institution like a technical college. And from tech, you can take whatever courses that you want to that will transfer into your 4-year degree, and you can still get a 4-year degree. So it doesn't close that door of opportunity, but it keeps your kids from having to burn out trying to get to calculus and just to get into the 4-year college as a freshman. They can transfer and be just fine. None of my kids were really good at math and they have 4-year degrees, and one graduated from College of Charleston, one graduated from USC, and they went to tech. And so we didn't pressure them and stress them out as high schoolers so that, they could find success and then they moved on. Ironically, my son is now doing calculus and computer engineering and coding and stuff, and I could have never gotten him to do that when he was in high school. So there is always a readiness factor, and so they, if they need it, they'll get it too. And so it's just a conversation that we can have each one by one as we go along. So coming back from that worksheet, then looking at that overview of what the course requirements are for the diploma standard. There's two ways that you can earn a credit. One is by covering a certain amount of material. So whatever curriculum you're using, they've put together for the high school credits and said this amount of material will count you as a credit. Some expert out there has decided that, and I am willing to take their word for it. But the idea with that is you can work through and cover the certain amount of material and take your whole year to do it. But like I said, some of the schools are actually on block schedules where they get 4 credits that they earn in the fall and then 4 different credits that they earn in the spring. So they might take their English credit and put that in the fall semester, and they're covering that amount of material in a shorter period of time, and they get a full credit for that. And so we can do that same kind of thing. So if your kids are working through a certain amount of material and they get done with it, but it's before the end of the school year, your 180 days are up, it still counts as a full credit. It gives them room to do some other things in there. And so you can shuffle them around. Maybe they do need to focus on just a couple of courses at a time and work through them in little blocks like that. Or maybe they just are really good at this subject and can work through it. Or you're maybe in a co-op or a resource center that they're really intense on this and you don't have time to get to some of these other independent study courses. So once those, block schedule weeks are up, then you have other time that you can fill in and go, well, we're just going to do all of this subject, in this, kind of crash course kind of setting. So you can cover a certain amount of material and count it as a credit. The other way that I think is what's so beautiful about homeschooling is real life learning also counts. You can look at time invested in projects and it counts as credits as well. PE is a good example of one that you can't just read through a certain amount of material and say, well, I've done PE. You can't also go out one day, swing a tennis racket and say, well, I've learned tennis today. No, you have to go out repeatedly. The point of physical education is personal fitness, learning that, skill and perfecting it, learning that muscle memory, that backstroke takes a while to get the hang of it. And so you've got to go out and repeat those skills over and over and over again to be good at some of these things. And so it's time invested in that learning that counts. And there are tracking sheets. I have a tracking sheet I can send out to that you just log in and say, this was almost like bowling. Halfway across is, a half an hour, and then an X through the box is a whole hour, and you can count up when you get to 120 hours of time invested. It can count as a project, a credit. And so we have a lot of other things that people are doing that count the same way as that real life learning. So think of like desktop publishing, for example. So you might find a course that goes through desktop publishing and says, pretend like you're having a birthday party and you're going to make a flyer that goes through your steps of, I've got to find a picture that I'm allowed to use. We're going to filter it. We're going to crop it. So it fits the page. We're going to use filters and whatever to, find the way it looks the best. And then we're going to put the words on there, when to come to my party, how who to contact, details, things like that. You get all your words on there, and then you pick the font and the colors and try different things. So, sizing on there so that the words pop from the background and they're readable. What if they don't pop? Then I put a little color box behind there. And you can go through all these steps of this. What if you were having this imaginary prescribed scenario of why you would need to go through these skills? Or what if you're really having a party and you go through those same kind of skills and you do it for real? Which of those projects do you think the student is really going to do a better job at, master the skills, and know really how to do it again the next time? I think really the real life reason, the one that has, more meaning to them. And so when you start to look at the things that you're learning and doing what of those things can you count? And so in order to do that, I recommend creating your own course to do that. So in order to create my own course, I love to start with like a course catalog and understanding what are the courses that are available at the public school anyway. And I like the one where I'm zoned just because they have a lot of variety and different schools. It's weird because some schools specialize in different credits. So there's like a fuller catalog of different things. And so I do like that one a lot. And I go to it and look at it just to see what the course titles are in each subject area and what it counts as, so that you can start to, get a feel for those things. What the titles are and what the content is that they're covering. So if you're wondering, are we doing similar stuff? You can say, oh, well, we should also add this in here. We should do a trifold thing, and we should do a bifold, a bulletin that just folds in half, and try different kinds of, publishing styles, not just the flat one sheet page kind of a thing. And then it gives you ideas of what you should be sure to include in there, and then find real life reasons why you want to do those things. Totally the same thing, right? And then you've got their course description that you can just copy and paste. This is the course description of what we're aiming to do. And you might even find a syllabus from one of the teachers that's teaching that. And I would print that off as just a reference for later in case you ever needed to go back and justify the course that you created for those kinds of things. And that's pretty much how you're planning your course of study, is covering those kinds of things. We will have a whole nother probably video that we'll need to do that's about how do you calculate grades, and what's the difference between honors weight and all those kinds of things. But right now we're just looking at, how do I pick my course of study? Because when you homeschool, you're going to DIY your child's education. So you want to pick this course of study that is going to fit into the goal that they're aiming for. Somebody's asking also about 8th grade. So 8th grade, you can start earning high school credits, and that go a high school credit in middle school, and it still goes on your high school transcript as part of your complete educational resume that's on there. So yeah, change your course titles and content, and look at those course descriptions and syllabuses for the courses that you might be creating. The real life learning sounds are working, and everybody can be heard. Like, those are all huge things that count as real life learning, and we've created them into courses. We have kids that are doing like culinary arts. They've started their own businesses, just lots and lots of things. And those especially are good for your electives. If you want to include some of those things in your core studies, you can as well. But for English, they're really more into like horror novels. You can do your English literature is all about bestsellers, or whatever content you want it to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be American literature and British literature and world literature, and the commonly used ones. You can be a lot more specific on and personal about reading a book, evaluating it, writing about it. It's still the same content. It's still the same goal of being able to, communicate in English and learn those subject areas. So it's up to you how much of that you want to incorporate, whether you're going to stick mostly to curriculum. Somebody said this is what we do. Or if you want to incorporate a lot of the real life learning kind of stuff that happens too. So as far as our policies, it is required. I do require that all high schoolers let me assist you in your transcripts, because there are things that you don't know. And I see people a lot, I know what the common mistakes are where they're like math. No, we need to know which maths you did. We need to know which sciences you did. And which social studies. Those have to be more specifically related to the topic, not just the general thing. Fine arts is another one that people will throw on there. Okay, what kind of fine arts? We need to know what you worked on, and that's what opens the doors of opportunity. And then I also calculate your GPA. We do follow the Department of Ed uniform grade scale for South Carolina. South Carolina is pretty special. It has its own grade scale, and it is weighted. GPA, it's not, so when you put 4.0 on your self-calculated things, it doesn't mean what you think. A 4.0 means you have a 90 average. It doesn't mean that you're an A. So we can have way above a 4.0, and it's super complicated, and I can do a whole nother workshop on that, but and talk about that a little bit in the case studies as well. But it's easier just to calculate it for you and help you figure it out that way. But the requirement then is that I need you to turn those things in by June 5th. And it does take me a while to get through all of those things. I prioritize the seniors first because we do have a deadline that we have to get things out for them to the colleges where they're going pretty quickly in June. And so I don't leave myself much of a window of opportunity to finish that requirement. And then we prioritize after that anybody who's transferring back into the public schools, and they need their transcripts so that the schools can put them in classes and set their schedules and things like that. And then we get through whatever classes that are left. So if you have a freshman or a middle schooler that is turning in grades and you're getting transcript assistance, it could be into July before I get back to you with feedback so that we can have a conversation about what your course of study looks like and how things are lining up. I'd much rather let us panic at the freshman and 8th grade level about what do we do? How do I got to put on here? Then wait until you're a senior and you've done it and guessed and said, oh, we think we have it all. Oh, wait, now we're missing PE, or we're missing, a world language that we needed for the college admissions requirements. And so it's hard to go back and add those things in when they didn't really happen, because we want an accurate reflection of your students' abilities and accomplishments. All right. The other thing that I do, the other policy that we have is about ranking. I do include ranking. I do calculate ranking. What I don't want us to do, and I don't really give you feedback about it, because I calculate everybody's individual grade and then I send your transcript to you and we talk about your child's abilities. This is the most accurate reflection of your child's abilities and accomplishments. Once I have everybody's all done, then I have to file them in order for the GPA and get a ranking report. So I don't tend to send you back another one that says, now your child is ranked at this. Because, and the other thing that's very important to know about that is that the rank changes from year to year. We get new people that come and new people that go, and it can shuffle it up. So if you're focused on, well, I need this rank, and you're playing the rank game, and trying to get your child further up the rank, it isn't necessarily in their best interest to do that. And so I'd rather us just talk about their abilities and accomplishments. Rank is just the byproduct. If you happen to fall at the top, then I'll let you know what we got to do next. But I've had lots of people that get the top rank and then they don't have the other requirements to get the scholarship. That is why I'm making sure that we are, following this ranking policy, is so that a few other kids that might not have gotten eligibility for a couple of scholarships might now. It just is extra work for me to do that, and our purpose is still for you to get the most accurate reflection of your child's abilities and accomplishments, not really to play the lottery game of, is my child gonna move up in rank or not, and get something. Because they still might not, even if they get moved up in rank, they still might not get the scholarship that you're aiming to try to do. So it just is what it is. And that's, again, another conversation that I have with people. But those are the policies that I have. It really is not optional for you to let me assist you in this. It is one of the things you're agreeing to when you choose SC Top, that I am going to help you with your transcript. You still can write your own transcript, your parent-made transcript, and submit it wherever you want to. And you don't have to use mine, but mine is there as a backup. I also send a copy to you. I am not the holder of the records. by law, you are. So I want you to have a copy of it back, and understand what the course of study is that you've got to do to go forward from there. And so that's why we talk about it year after year, one by one. It takes me a while, and our association's grown to about, I think we had about 250 high schoolers last year. So yes, I have worked through a pile of transcripts. I am ready to work through another pile with you going forward this year, and hopefully some of these little tutorials will help you. And as you are getting started in your high school level, to start planning your course of study and feel empowered and encouraged to do that, because it is on you to figure a lot of this stuff out. So, but I'm here to help and advise you along the way. So, thanks a lot for tuning in, and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks a bunch, chickadees.